Hello, my name is Phil Mershon with Return on Initiative, and today it is my pleasure to be able to present to you a gentleman I have known for quite some time, and we have worked together a bit. His name is Dr. Keis, and he is with a company called CRG. Ken, how are you doing? Glad to have you here.
Well, thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me on or hanging out and just connecting together.
Well, Ken, I'm trying to think of a nice way to concisely describe what you do. You are an expert on leadership, life purpose, wellness, and I think most intriguing to me personally, assessment strategies that can help a user to increase their success. How did you come to develop CRG?
Well, there's two streams here. So I got into this industry in a course where you tape these things, you don't know how long they last, but at the time of us having this conversation 34 years ago. And so I got into the industry leaving a successful sales position to be a sales trainer. And then I got connected to the founder of CRG, who really initiated CRG as it was really a consulting and coaching firm, but as a professor was very frustrated with the typical assessments that were in the marketplace for his students, and so really recommended to his university not to use Myers-Briggs. And I got involved with the company way back in 1990 as VP of marketing, and I had my own training company on the side. And then we also had the rights to DISC for the West Coast of US and Canada, found some internal issues with it, and on a dare really created our first tool, the Personal Style Indicator, which is our personality assessment, and is now, Bill, the #1 rated personality assessment globally by participants. So there's lots of evaluators and lots of psychologists that say, hey, we wouldn't choose CRG's PSI, but participants do. And our whole goal was to create a set of tools or resources that serve the learner, not the test giver. You know, if you go back 30 years ago, psychologists said, I'm the only person qualified to tell you who you are, Phil, because you couldn't possibly know. Right. We're the exact opposite. So then what happened is as a company, as an organization with this success and really just breakthrough research on our own proprietary models, we discovered that really developing the whole person is where it lies. So we have 3 words we use. We're one of the best companies in the world that help to create self-awareness that leads to self-management, that leads self-mastery, but in a holistic way, meaning developing the whole person. So we created our own model and then expanded to over a dozen assessments for your professional and personal development purposes. So personality is one, then values, then self-worth. I have a diploma in nutrition and genetics, so we have a wellness assessment. So everybody's talking about mental health now, or stress, or the unhealthiness of the developed world. Well, we address that. We have leadership skills. My Ph.D. is in leadership and management. And so we have a very in-depth skills model, entrepreneurship, learning styles, job fit, and then even team assessments where we do bring team values together and bring synergy from an organization. So, and then we expanded that more recently to build out all our in-person curriculum. So we're not just, okay, here's an assessment. It's an assessment with a development mindset. So we have curriculum or workshops that we did in person that we've now ported into online courses. And that's our main focus, is the online assessments, which are in multiple languages. We're in 30 countries and 13 languages. But now the online courses that you can go on a journey 24/7 on your own to help to understand yourself and or your team to do it, and or just at any kind of application personally or professionally.
Wow. You mentioned 2 names here that take me back to my younger days of Myers-Briggs. I remember a time when they kind of seemed to have the world to themselves as far as these sort of assessments are concerned. And I've taken those myself a couple of times, and the impression I always got, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that they're very much not for the person taking the assessment. They're very much for somebody else, and you're never quite sure. Um, am I
Well,
wrong?
I have to be careful here because you're going to say you're trashing your competition. But I remember being at an event in California about 25 years ago, and we had a booth, and across from us was an MBTI booth. And there's this individual had this response from MBTI, and there were 3 or 4 certified MBTI trainers there, and they were all arguing what the interpretation of the results meant. And so part of what was happening is that, was our research is that basically this was based on Carl Jung's work. He did abnormal psychology and abnormal groups. And then there were some internal struggles that DISC had as well. And we just said we were going to address those concerns. There are many great assessments in the marketplace that are in-depth for different purposes that we've even partnered with and used with our clients. But for the purposes of personal professional development, where I teach you how to fish, then we want to argue that our tools are as good as any others in the world. I was just actually on another call prior to us having this conversation, and the individual who is out of South Africa that serves sort of that entire continent said, your personal style indicator is by far still the best that our clients are experiencing, the report, that it really is for that individual. So we have people as young as 15 and CEOs of Fortune 100 companies using the tools to be able to understand self and others so I can live an intentional life. And then we also added another part to it, Phil, that many other tools don't have, and that is where we do a job fit from a personality point of view, not from a competency point of view. So you might have expertise in engineering, but is the nature of the position from a personal style, that's what we call it, a match to your propensities? Now, everybody talks about the strengths mindset and the strengths assessments, but we're talking about a personal style fit for a position, because if the nature of the work doesn't match who I am long-term, I cannot maintain engagement. And we know what Gallup's done with all the studies, Phil. In the last 15 years, the engagement has been as low as 10% and as high as 20%, and somewhere in that range. So that means that 80 to 90% of the people dislike what they do from mildly to irritate to loathe. That's not okay. And I remember having a lunch in California with Dick Bowles, who wrote the book, What Color's Your Parachute? He's just recently passed away at 93 or something. And also his colleague, Dick Nodal, who also recently passed away. And between the two of them, they had nearly 80 years in the career development field. And I asked them, I said, with all the assessments, with all the tools, with all the resources, why do we have such a confused workforce and marketplace and population? And in unison, they said, because people have not been willing to do the work. You know what? It takes time to develop personal clarity in a world that has so much information, like overwhelm, confusion, and lack of clarity. It just pervades the entire population. People don't know that they don't know that they don't know, or they simply don't know, and they don't even know where to start. So one of the things, and rather than creating like one massive 4,000 question, and I'm being dramatic there,
Sure.
questionnaire for you, we created all these micro assessments. So I can do my values assessment in 30 minutes. I could do my personality assessment in 15 minutes. I can do my self-worth assessment in 20 minutes. And then I have these segments, and all of those fit together in developing the whole person. So we created what we call the personality development factors model. And we have 7 factors. Now, there are many factors that are in there. So personality is personal style is one. And we believe that personality is global, and it applies to every person. Like, this is non-cultural implications. It doesn't matter who you are. As a human race, we have a genetic predisposition to things that we like and prefer and what we dislike. And thank goodness we believe that this stays mostly constant throughout our lifetime. Imagine, Phil, you waking up tomorrow and then you being interested in being an oil rigger, and the next day you want to be an accountant, and the next day you want to be a firefighter, and all with a different disposition. This is called schizophrenia. It's what that is. So we believe that you have this anchor, this foundation we call personal style that you take throughout your lifetime. And it is, there was a study done by TalentSmart, one of our competitors. Only 2% of the population can realize their potential without the knowledge of their personal style, Phil. So if I don't know who I am in this predisposition, in these preferences, then how can I make intentional decisions about relationships, about work, about dynamics, what I should, what I shouldn't do? Success in life is equally saying no as it is yes. So do I have a shiny object disease and I go towards a thing, but it's really not a fit? So my ability to say no, I know long-term, I'm going to be frustrated by that position because of the nature of the work doesn't match who I am. It's not my preferences. And then the other one is when we think about values, all the research around values clarity is when I know my values, then my stress levels go down, my confidence level increase because I know that who I am. We have a play on words. What would it mean if you could make the right decision every time? And people say, well, that's not possible. I said, well, if it is possible or nearly possible, if you're using values to filter your decisions. So if you know what those behavioral values, that's what we use, and what those motivational values are. So example is, one of our values is tranquility in our list. And I remember going into an organization that had a 400% turnover rate, excuse me. And the reason being is he had hired a lot of people with tranquility in their profile, but this was a credit collection department, Phil. And I said, what are you doing hiring these people? He says, well, our reputation is horrible in the marketplace. I wanted to hire nice people. But what he didn't realize is these nice people could not tolerate the stress of conflict every single call. That's why the turnover. So it was right intentions, wrong outcome. So we adjusted how he was hiring, and then he went from 400% to a 40% just in 90 days.
I'm trying to picture what those conversations must have been like for those folks. And would you mind if I asked you if you could pay your bill today? I mean, if today's not convenient, that's okay. I mean, next year, sure. Okay, well, I don't want to trouble you. I mean, I just can't even imagine what that.
Well, it was interesting, and these people, the fact that they even said yes to the position was to say that both parties were not conscious, awake, and aware and deliberate with their decisions. First of all, the people that have tranquility in their profile, if they knew that, they should have said no and never applied to a position like that. But they said yes, and the manager shouldn't have gone down that list, but they only did with what they knew. So, most people don't know that they don't know. They're unconsciously unconscious, and they just don't have this intentionality or deliberate nature of their position. Now, the other side is I wrote a book which is non-assessment driven called The Quest for Purpose. And the reason I wrote that book is that assessments isn't the answer to everything. I mean, it is a contributing factor to clarity. It's just like gasoline doesn't make a car. Gasoline makes a car go, but I still need the wheels. I still need the engine. I need all the other components. So assessments is really one of the components in life, and it could be several components, but then there are other things and other factors. So people used to call it narrative or journaling, or just the only person who can know if something is a fit for you, Phil, is Phil. I can't be in your head. You're the only one that can verify that. I could maybe fool you. I could agree with you. You might have some insights as a psychologist, such as in my work, that this is what I see. This is what I think's going on. But when we think about purpose in life, which around engagement, I have my personal style, but then I also have this whole area of interest, gifts, and talents. So you mentioned around MBTI in the very beginning of the show, and just we believe it was misused, where a lot of times people were trying to determine the professions or the SIC or national occupational codes that people were supposed to do based on their personality type. We absolutely disagree with that. We think it's discriminatory because interests, gifts, and talents are separate measures. So you and I could have the identical personal style indicator score, one wanting to be a firefighter, one to be an educator. So there's not a right or wrong. It's when we think of personal style or personality, as other people talk about it, it's how I want to engage life in my preferences, not my interests, gifts, or talents. So those are separate measures. And anybody that says, well, I'm going to give you this list of occupations based on your personality, just run. It's ill-advised. for you to do it. Now, are there some benefits to really sort of the direction and the type of occupations that link to that profile? Sure. But here's the reality. There's 40,000 job titles in the US and Canada or globally already. There's new jobs. When you think about jobs, as we have this conversation, artificial intelligence is like gone nuts and wild, and it's just going to continue to grow. Nobody even talked about that. People talked about it 10 years ago, but it wasn't really a reality. Or was I a fiber optic repair person? I mean, that didn't exist 20 years ago either. So all these new roles and responsibilities, autonomous driving, all the things that are affecting us now. Now people are talking about battery technology or solar technology, all these other sort of dynamics, or just the ability to optimize energy production and all these things. Well, these are in many cases new roles and responsibilities and positions that didn't even exist before. So for some of you watching this, the roles and responsibilities your kids will do aren't even invented yet. So this idea that I'm going to have this occupation linked to this personal style is just ludicrous. Don't do it. But yes, you have tendencies. You have certain components of the role. Like for me, independence is one of my values. It's also based on my personal style. Why have I owned my own business or been part of a sort of an independent part of a business for 30 years? That's because that's my nature. That's who I am. That's who I know. I couldn't possibly work for somebody else. I have, but in roles and responsibility where I was independent. So when I was in my sales role, I had my own territory, talked to the sales manager on Monday. I didn't really report or do anything to anybody except for get the job done. And as long as I got results, my sales manager never talked to me. It was all done. So I could see who I wanted, when I wanted within my territory, get the results I wanted, and they left me alone. So, but I knew that sort of in advance, that nature of that position worked for me.
Let me ask you, because this is fascinating. I've got about 1,000 questions, but I'm going to try to narrow it down a little bit. So when this doesn't, when what my personal preferences are match up, well, kind of like with the credit collection thing you're talking about, when it doesn't work, when the what I'm doing for a living does not necessarily jive with my personal values, what what can go wrong there? Because
Well, first of
my
all,
intuition tells me that a lot of people are in that situation.
well, for sure. I mean, what happens is stress levels become significant because every single day you're going to something that you dislike from mildly irritate to loathe. I remember a friend of mine I coached who was a medical doctor, an MD, and he said, I hate my work. I said, what? I said, you went to school for 15 years to be a specialist. And so what motivated you to do that journey? He said, well, that my parents always wanted me to be a doctor. And so there's so many social, economical, family pressures to go down routes. My wife was an academic coach at university for a decade, and she had students in her office that were in tears. And one student was from Asia, and her parents had a cosmetic manufacturing plant. So she was taking all the sciences, and she hated sciences. She had no interest in it. But her dad was insistent she was going to take over the research and development division of the company. She wanted to do the arts. She wanted to maybe do marketing, maybe communications, but nothing to do with the research and development of cosmetics. So we have all of these things where people think, well, don't do that. When I left my sales position to start into the sales training and start my own entrepreneurial venture, my family said, are you kidding me? What are you doing? You got a car, you get your lunches paid for, you got all your benefits covered, and you're going to go do that? The other thing is I actually grew up in a dairy farm. I'm the firstborn male, third generation Eastern European descent. And I came back from agricultural college. And then after a couple of years in, I realized this wasn't going to work working with my dad. I love him, but we just don't work together. It's just not where it's at. And when I left, of course, they said, you betrayed us because we did all of this for you. So the pressure externally from all kinds of voices is significant for many people. The other thing that happens is, and this is a society, especially in social media, where almost everybody has an opinion, but almost nobody has wisdom. So everybody will share what they're thinking, but it doesn't mean anything. It has, in many cases, no value. You know, what's the old statement? Your opinion of me is none of my business. So I really not interested in what you have to say about my journey, my direction, my profession, unless you are one of my trusted advisors. So my encouragement to other people here is that you're going to hear lots of voices. Is if you want to go into another direction, Phil, like you said, I'm frustrated. First of all, just take a breath. You're in a space. So my medical doctor, I said to him, just keep your practice. Now let's go on a journey. You know you're not going to stay, but you've got that as a baseline. You've got that as a foundation. What direction are we going to go in? So let's go on a journey together. If you weren't doing this, what would it be? Rather than quit that and then just be nowhere, you have some knowledge there. You have expertise there. Yes, you're frustrated, but at least you've got that. So I coach people not to leave, but then to go on this journey about what would be a transition for you. What would be the possibility? Because most cases they don't know. Now, interesting enough, this is what this doctor did. He moved into being a trainer and coach for other doctors that were stressed. And
Wow.
now his business, because he is an MD, he has credibility with that marketplace. And
Right.
he loves helping his colleagues to help them figure out their life direction and lower their stress level and increase their wellness level, of all places in healthcare.
That's very ironic and it's wonderful.
So we leveraged what he did know into something what he enjoyed and loves, and he's very successfully in continuing to do this project, globally. And now, of course, now with the virtual world, you can do it anywhere, anytime, to coach and to hold sessions with individuals. So my encouragement to people is that, first of all, you need to make that choice. The other one is, most of us, I have a coach I've been working on or with for the better part of 3 or 4 years. I've had other advisors around me. Is don't try to do it alone and get advice from somebody who is an expert who knows it. I mean, I wouldn't go to real estate investment advice to somebody who's never bought real estate. I would never go to a family member about owning your own business if never owned their own business. So go to the spaces. There's lots of advisors, trusted advisors out there that have a proven track record, that have your success in mind and not going to bring a judgmental tone. So, when my son was 12 and we were at a family Christmas dinner, and my aunt asked, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" I said, "I'm going to have my own band, and I'm going to be a musician." My aunt says, "What are you going to do for a real job?" Well, I almost went over and took my 80-year-old aunt and threw her out the window. I mean, I just said, "What are you doing to my 12-year-old son?" I said, "Stop it." Because again, this is this family influence where, probably she was well-meaning. You can't make money as a excuse me, as a musician. Now, my son has moved into being a very successful realtor, but he was part of a worship band, at his school and his church after that. So he enjoyed music in a different way, and so he continued to thrive with that interest that he had.
Wow. That story really rings a bell with me. We'll talk about that some other time. But yeah, that does he still remember that? Obviously you do, but does he still remember that conversation?
I'm not sure, but he knows it's in the book, and he worked for me as a videographer. So I've told it many times with him being in front of the camera. So I know for sure that he was there. Now, here's my own personal story. I've now authored nearly 4 billion words of content. We have a dozen, 14 different assessments by multiple different authors. And when I bought CRG, I bought 100% of CRG in 2002. And then I took 10 years to revise everything. But in grade 9, this is prior to computers, I know I look very young, is my grade 9 English teacher said I would never amount to anything. And that's because reading and writing was very difficult for me. When I was doing my MBA, it was discovered I was dyslexic. And that was when I started to use a computer and started to learn how to type. I never thought that would be something I would ever do. So you could have never convinced me, even in my mid-20s, that I would be an author, like not even plausible. I knew I was going to be a speaker of some sort because
Yeah.
I was interested in that. Even in 16 and 17 years of age, I was MC of many sort of local banquets and things like that. But to be an author, no way. And so here I have, 3 books that I've done on my own, another fourth one that's co-done, and another one on its way. I think that's probably going to be my last for now, because I just want to kind of relax and enjoy that. And then I've also presented over 3,000 presentations, done over 10,000 hours of coaching consulting. That was not even plausible when we had the sole source contract to do all the soft skills for Chrysler Canada. Myself and another business partner, we co-developed over 43 programs in a 10-year period of time. So who knew that that was plausible, that was possible? So my encouragement to people is that your ability to be successful is equally saying no as yes, but you need to know yourself first before you can start going and chasing all these things. A lot of times people make decisions on monetary decisions. Oh, Phil, we're going to pay you $150,000, move to San Francisco. And you don't like San Francisco, stop that. What is your calling? What's your assignment? What's your purpose? What should you be doing? And here's my bias. You need to bring your best self, not from a self-centered point of view, but from a self-honoring point of view. And your highest level of contribution is when you're in your zone. When you are in your sweet spot, whatever that might be, and you know who you are, and you're intentional, and you know your values, and you know your personal style, and you know what your leadership skills are so that you can serve others, then you can bring the highest level of contribution to life and the most amount of fulfillment. Who wouldn't want that? And you got to lean into this. Only you can do it as the individual. And if I'm in an organization, then my encouragement is you need to encourage your team to do this, to have a culture of growth, of a growth mindset, so that individuals can go to the next level. And that's what all our resources and development are about, all the way from grade 10 students for learning and instructional styles and personal styles and self-worth, all the way to CEOs, and everybody needs it. I laugh sometimes in a sort of a sarcastic way, where leaders say, I don't need this. I remember being asked to come in and do a regional meeting for Ford. This is many, many years ago. And the VP asked me to come in and do all the regional managers. There was some pre-work that needed to be done because we had limited time. Well, guess who's the only person who didn't do the pre-work? The VP of marketing who paid me thousands of dollars to be there. So he walked out of the room. His 75 managers from the country were in the room. He walked out of the room because he didn't have the pre-work done. What do you think it did to the event? So what are you saying? I mean, that is arrogance to the highest degree. Stop it already. So I don't have time for it. Hang on. One of my colleagues, Marshall Goldsmith, who's endorsed our book, he's got a New York Times bestseller, Triggers, as well as What Got You Here Won't Get You There. A lot of times our ego, our arrogance, our confidence got us into senior positions, but that's not what keeps us there. And we see this all the time. Number one salesperson becomes a sales manager. It's a whole different skill set. I need to motivate Phil. What's important to Phil, not me. If I'm the CEO, it's not about your ideas, it's your team. You don't hire the best people so that you can be the expert on everything. You hire the best people so that you can draw the best out of them. But most people have never developed that skill. I remember we were just doing some work with a colleague of mine, Dr. Mitch Avidi, who does a lot of work in law enforcement. And we were doing a work with a sheriff's group, and there was probably about 30 people in the room. And so we asked the room, there wasn't a single person in the room who was promoted to corporal, sergeant, and lieutenant who had leadership training before being in the force for 10 years. So they're in a leadership role for a decade before they even get a single day on leadership training. Well, why do you have all these incidents? Because they're not equipped, right? You wouldn't want to go and sit into a new airplane or an airplane to travel somewhere from LA to New York, Mexico, wherever it is, London, and say, well, the pilot's, he hasn't had any training yet, but he's very dedicated. He's very enthusiastic. Hello. So there's all kinds of people that are in leadership roles, Phil, who have never really been equipped to win, haven't done the training, have not been in a culture of development to be able to get them there. And so this is where we just have passion about it. I think you sense that, when we work with young adults all the way to senior individuals, when they engage our tools, they say, oh, finally, there's almost like this relief of acknowledgement of self. When people take personality assessments, many times they're trying to figure out other people. Okay, who's Phil? I said, stop it. what we have found after I bought the company and worked with this for over 20 years specifically is that you want to learn about yourself, and taking an assessment is for self-validation and confirmation first. Before I can start interacting and being intentional with my communication style with you, Phil, I need to know who I am. Who am I? What's my propensities? What am I doing? The other one is this validation. Remember the old saying that parents used to say, kids are to be seen, not heard. Well, what? What? I mean, so that was even now, I have siblings over 50, still joke about, oh, Ken talks a lot. I mean, you're talking about when I was like 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. Now I get paid for a living. I understand when to shut up. I understand when to speak. Mostly. I mean, we all have our moments. How can I be conscious awake? Now, I'm a communicator. That's what I do for a living. But I can sit at my office and not talk to anybody for 4 hours as I write and develop content. And so why would we say that to a child? Kids are to be seen, not heard. If I'm a verbal child that actually gets my energy through this communication window, why would I be derogatory, discriminatory towards that? So again, know who you are, be confident in that, lean into these different sets assessments, the online courses that take you through a deep dive in all of these in the application, and then be equipped to go and just bring your best life from a fulfillment point of view, from a happiness point of view, from an engagement point of view, from a contribution point of view, whatever it is, all these active tense words that you are going to be doing something and you're going to be making a difference out there.
Um, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but you mentioned that you're working on a new book. Can you talk about it at all? Or
Well, we're actually just revising the leadership book that has been the framework of our leadership course. So this leadership course was a 160-hour university course, and it's an assessment, which is called the Leadership Skills Inventory of Leadership Skills 360. And we are now just, Mitch and I have decided we're going to dive in and revise the book, from scratch. We're going to keep the framework, but just really refresh that book. We're talking about it being Magnus leadership, which is the work that we're doing within the law enforcement, or Mitch is anyways. And so to just say, when we think about Magnus, or, trying to be magnificent, and not from an arrogant point of view, but just to bring your best and to be resilient and to help others to be that same way. That's kind of the book is called Transforming Leadership, but we're talking about it being leading the Magnus way, transforming others through the 12 principles and 60 skills that we have a framework. And then it's going to be a full online course as well for leaders to take.
and we have talked about quite a bit here, and yet I know for a fact that there's so much more. If someone watching this wants to learn more about the things that we're talking about here today, how can they go about doing it?
Well, the best way, of course, websites are still real.
Sure.
So crgleader.com is our website, and all the assessments are listed under the assessment tab. All the courses are listed on the online tab. We have a contact you if anybody wants to have a personal conversation. If you want to bring this into the marketplace, I mean, we remarket our tools to other professional developers globally. So coaches, consultants, trainers, developers use our tools and resources to serve their clients. And then the other group is internal developers, HR, training managers, consulting, change management consultants internally. They use our tools and resources to serve their constituents, their employees, their participants, whoever that might be. And then we also have a whole interface online where we actually site license these tools within organizations so they can brand it down right into their organization. They can load some of our courses right into there and just be a subscription for their course. So technology is now allowing us to do things that we couldn't do before. I mean, when I bought the company just in 2002, we didn't have anything online. Now we're only online.
Right.
And I mean, and to think I can go online on my phone right now, take a values assessment, be done in 30 minutes, and have more clarity in my life than I ever have in just 30 minutes. How's that even possible? And then I could take the online course if I want to and just even dive deeper and then start doing the work so I can go to the next level. I mean, it's not just showing up. I mean, CRG really is the beginning, not the end. The assessment helps you to get into the pond, and then you need to start to do the swimming with the new information that you get. And so these are all metaphors for you to be able to go to the next level. So crgleader.com. I also do a lot of speaking, coaching, and consulting globally. So kenkeis.com, KenKeis.com is my speaker site. And then all of them have contact forms and be able to kind of access this, and the online courses, the books, the assessments, multiple languages that are available are all listed there.
Would you be willing to come back again in the future and tell us some more about what you're doing?
Absolutely. We can dive deep into some of the differences, like why our personal style indicator is #1 in the world. And we have whole new, let me just tease everybody. We have whole different definitions of introversion and extroversion, and it has nothing to do with people. We believe we have the correct definition, and that other people have biases that they have misunderstood for 40 years. So we can come back and for sure, Phil, backfill with more information and share, and hopefully encourage others to go to the next level.
That makes me very happy to hear. Dr. Ken Keis, ladies and gentlemen, that is at crgleader.com. And Ken, thank you very much. We'll be talking to you again soon.
Thank you.